Lance Leipold, Travis Goff, Jalon Daniels, and more. We're at Big 12 Media Day. Some fun things to say, including about where Jalon Daniels could be this season, where KU is as a program, field news, all that we're going to get to on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening? Derek Johnson here at D Johnson Radio on Twitter. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. And thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. Let's get that thing up to 4K on the subs list. So please do if you haven't. And if you have a family member, log into their account and subscribe. On today's edition, we're talking a little KU football Big 12 Media Day action, some of the most notable quotes from Lance Leipold and company out at Big 12 Media Day, and what it means for KU football. Let's get started with some of the things that Lance Leipold said on the podium. And I found this one very interesting, and him just talking about kind of building the program and where they're at. Now, there was another quote that he gave kind of talking about, what are some of the things that you tried to bottle up that you did differently maybe in November last year when you were on that hot streak, when you won those 3 straight ranked games, you kind of tried to bring into this season. And it was a lot of process-oriented stuff and the routine-oriented stuff that they were trying to do. But I found this interesting too. He said, as we continue to build our program, is one that we want to continue building consistency. One of the things that has come up, through a national media writer is that in the last 2 seasons of portal changes is that we've had the fewest scholarship players enter the portal. And at Kansas, and for us, roster retention has been a big factor for us, important ingredient since our arrival, because to be quite honest, there was a lot of attrition before we arrived, and to be able to keep that. That's going to be a big part in the new rev share model. We want to be competitive again in obtaining players. We still want to be able to develop players through the high school ranks, as most of us do, and of course then supplement with players through the transfer portal. And you could probably look at that answer and say, oh, so they want to do a little bit of everything, like at the end, or it's like, yeah, they still want to do, I find it interesting from a standpoint of they're still going to make their backbone. And I think we saw it on last year's team. I know it didn't, have the end result that everybody wanted with not making a bowl game. But you saw it where the majority of resources went to retaining players, went to making sure this player who could potentially be an all Big 12 player doesn't transfer to another school, that it didn't necessarily going out and getting new talent. Now, obviously, when you have a year like this year where you're losing a bunch of players, you're going to have to backfill that with transfer portal talent, which they did, but that remains their focus. And as we look to where they're at with their high school recruiting, which has been really good the past couple of years, especially compared to, past times, past coaches at Kansas, that is going to add to the importance. If you're bringing in better recruits than other Kansas coaches, other Kansas teams have, okay, well, if you got to develop them, which I think we know this staff is pretty good at developing, and then from there, you also have to retain them. And so if that is the focus, I think that's a good thing for KU and where you look at as you try to get an idea of where this program is going to be. He also talked about Jalon Daniels, did Lance Leipold, and here's part of the quote of what he said. He said, the thing I love about Jalon is he's the same person he was 4 years ago. He's humble, he's hardworking. It's been an interesting road for Jalon and the Jayhawks. When you see Jalon playing his best, I think there's not many better, that's for sure. At the same time, as he's had to persevere through some injuries and doing some things, he's stayed the same person. He doesn't make excuses. He doesn't know. He's been positive. He walks around with the same smile on his face, and he's never once, like I said, made an excuse or deflected anything that hasn't gone his way. And that alone is something that I know our locker room greatly respects about him, and his energy and his positivity is very, very contagious. I think as much as last year you had a bunch of seniors on the roster, to me last year I don't know, I guess Devin Neal's team. The thing with football is there's so many guys on the roster and things do get segmented out sometimes positionally or offense and defense. But last year, I think of Devin Neal's team. And it's funny because you're talking about last year, Jalon Daniels at that point is depending parts of 4 seasons starting quarterback for KU. But this is really his team. I feel like, this is really his season. Last year was about Devin Neal and Kobe Bryant. And maybe the year before was about those guys and Jason Bean. This is Jalon's team, and it's that final run. for him. And I think it's just cool because every interaction, that when I was working in radio that I ever had with Jalon Daniels was that positivity, that infectious energy. Even before he was the starter, it was like apparent to see that like this guy lights up a room, and that was cool to see. And you never know how somebody's going. Like it almost in a weird way. I know when you're living in the moment and things are going bad, and that things did not go well for Jalon in the first 5 games or whatever you want to say of last season, that it's easy when you're in the moment, and when we're in the moment, we're talking about this sort of thing. Like, do they need to make a change? Do they need to, change an offensive coordinator? Like you get to some of those questions. And I think looking back on it now, though, you almost look at it and you're like, it's almost a level of like respect, at least for me, of like how you handled that situation. You stayed positive through it. You worked through it. You had a much better back half of the season, and you never threw anybody under the bus. You never like got too down on yourself. Maybe we could point to times on the football field where, it looked like maybe your confidence was a little shaken and like, okay, that's going to affect your level of play, but like that's natural. He never let that be like an outward thing. And that's important too, from a leadership perspective, which the quarterback position just kind of inherently is a leadership perspective. All right. There's some other quotes from Lance Leipold talking about Bryce Foster, talking about kind of overcoming some of those 1-score games, situations like that. We'll get to that next. This is Locked on Jayhawks. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money just felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Do you ever wish you had all your accounts and spending in one place instead of having to log into multiple spots and then you change tabs on your phone and then, it logged you out of one spot? That's annoying. You want it all in one spot. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year with Monarch Money. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of Locked on Jayhawks. Don't forget to check out our episode talking about Noah Shelby leaving, what KU does from there, or some of our other episodes from this week. We talked plenty of other KU football during this week here on Locked on Jayhawks. And don't forget, too, you can check out Locked on College Football and or Locked on College Basketball for your second and or third listen every day. Okay, so Lance Leipold also beyond the podium. Those to me were the 2 quotes that kind of stood out the most from his podium conversation. He also had a conversation with the ESPN crew as they're down there. And he talked a little bit about situational football being a big focus this offseason. The quote was the unlucky, so to speak, start to last season. There's been a huge emphasis on the little plays over the course of the game. I think he said those 3 to 5 like very impactful plays that can kind of pop up that can be the difference in you winning or losing a game. And this is definitely so critical in the Big 12, where a majority of your games are going to be, maybe not a majority, but a lot of your games are going to be 1 score. And we went back over the previous years. Kansas in the Lance Leipold era coming into this year was firing at about a 500 clip in 1-score games. This year they went 1-5, and obviously the one they won had a little bit of luck revert back their way with where the pooch punt landed against BYU. At the same point in time, you do earn some of your luck. Like you still had to make plays. You still had to score the touchdown after that. You still had to make the stop after that. But point being, if Kansas is even a similar team to where they were last year, but they're just better in 1-score games, you're going to get a better record. Like there's a chance that if you played the 2024 Kansas team against the 2025 Kansas team in a 7-game series, that maybe the 2024 Kansas team wins, in 7 games or in 6 games. But maybe the 2025 Kansas team, based on the schedule they're going to have this year, and maybe a little bit more luck, and maybe a little bit better, especially if they're focusing on it, created luck, so to speak, or like making your own, I guess, I don't know, like making your own history, so to speak, that this team ends up with a 1, 2, 3 game better record, just by being better in 1-score games. And, part of that goes back to the Jalon Daniels stuff where it's like, if Jalen's rocking, if Jalen's on, you're probably going to do a little bit better in one-score games. If your defense is good at closing out games, like there were times where KU's defense was good in the first 3 quarters and then maybe struggled at the end of games, like maybe, focusing on this sort of thing, maybe having better depth, maybe that helps in both of those areas. But that was good to hear that that's been a big focus for them because, that was the difference in a lot of games for them, probably 5 or 6 losses a season ago. That was definitely a difference in them not making it to a bowl game. We also found out about Bryce Foster, who was not there at Media Day. DJ Withers was there. I want to talk about those 2 things specifically because there's a quote on Foster, and I just find the Withers one being there, I don't know, interesting, fun, in a good way. So let's get to those next. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for joining us on LOJ again, anywhere you get your podcast and or our YouTube page. So Bryce Foster was supposed to be going down to Big 12 Media Days, ended up not happening. Here was the quote from Lance Leipold. Bryce had a little procedure done that's going to hold him back a little bit, and they didn't want him to fly. So he'll be ready for the opening game and stuff, but it was just a decision we made. He's disappointed, and I'm disappointed for him because he deserved to be here as well. I just spoke to him yesterday, and everything is good. So good news. Sounds like he's going to be good to go for the start of the season. I guess we could go back and point to past like Jalon Daniels injury stuff that, we've been told something and then it was actually worse than it was. So I guess there is a little bit of that in the back of your mind, but I think the hope there is that he's going to be okay. Obviously stinks he's not able to come down, but that would be, it's going to be very imperative to get him back because he is the rock of your offense. You can make the argument he is the best player on the team. All Big 12 center returning, like he's a very good player, obviously. But what I did find interesting is that DJ Withers went down, and DJ Withers, he wasn't the replacement. He was going to go down whether Bryce Foster went or not. But the reason I find it interesting is that KU has a group of what I think is a really good, 5 or 6 man defensive tackle rotation. Like I feel really solid about KU's defensive tackle rotation. And regardless of who's in there, I feel good about the depth they have. I feel good about the rotations they have. I feel good about a lot of those players. The big question I think I have for the defensive tackle room is more just about, okay, can one of these guys, right? If you have 5 solid guys who are all, who could all start for Kansas and you'd be cool with it, you'd be okay with it, but can one guy maybe emerge from going from being, okay, you have a group of 5 good players who can rotate in. Can one guy emerge to being great? Can one guy emerge to being an all Big 12 player? Can one guy emerge into being an NFL draft pick or something on the defensive tackle room? That would take the room and the whole defense and the defensive line to the next level. And so as we try to figure out who it is, like Blake Harold maybe makes some sense because he played a lot as a redshirt freshman and played really well. So it makes sense that he's going to get even better as a redshirt sophomore. Gage Key's coming back after maybe learning a little bit from Auburn. Like that would make sense. We've seen a lot of Tommy Dunn and DJ Withers over the years. There's a lot of guys that you could go to. Keenan Caldwell saw some good flashes from him last year. Maybe this is a signal. And maybe it's more of a leadership thing. Like maybe DJ Withers is kind of the leader of the defensive tackle room. But as we do try to figure out, okay, who is the best candidate for that to happen? Maybe this is served on a silver platter to be like, DJ Withers is the best candidate for that sort of path, that sort of thing to happen to. So that's why I just found that at least a little bit interesting there. The other thing that we found out is that Jalon Daniels has brought out his receiver group to California to throw with them. And that is awesome news. That is a great thing because you look at last year and, I think you can probably also attribute a little bit of KU offense, Jalon and KU's overall struggles in the first 4 or 5 games of the season last year to Jalon Daniels maybe being a little bit rusty. You're learning a new offense. I know a lot of the stuff was the same, but still there's new concepts and different things Jeff Grimes wants to do. And you're doing that. You haven't thrown to the receivers because you missed summer ball, you missed spring ball with the injury. Well, this year you missed spring ball, so you start to worry about, okay, is there going to be a rust issue at the beginning of the year again? No, because this time now you're getting to throw in the summer, and now you're getting all your group of receivers to come out in California and throw with them and establish that chemistry where you can avoid having those early season rust issues. That's great news, I think, for KU too. The last thing I wanted to touch on was from Travis Goff. He said, quote, "We're going to have an announcement in the fundraising space in the next few weeks that I think maybe is one in college athletics history." Now, Travis Goff spoke a little bit on some other stuff, the stadium, where things are at. They're going to get the grass into, and it's obviously going to be ready for week 0 for KU, their first game of the season, and how exciting that is. And obviously that's all great. This will be very interesting too, right? In a world where you are trying to fund a stadium, you always still do have to worry about facilities for, your other sports. You do have to worry about, okay, what are scholarship numbers going to be at for some of the sports? Like, how many are we going to go deep on some of these different sports? Paying the different players rev share with building a basketball roster, building a baseball roster, football roster, all these different things that you have to kind of counterbalance and weigh in if you were Travis Goff. So any way you can get that money. But what I do find interesting, him saying that this is a one of one in college athletics history. Now, does that mean that it's one of one in terms of somebody is donating like an exorbitant amount of money? I guess part of it too is like, is him saying this is one of one? Is it actually the first time this donation has ever happened? Or is it like a sponsorship with a company that has never happened? Are they looking into private equity? I don't know. I'm just like tossing things out there, for instance. Could it just be a number that has never happened for KU? If it's entire college athletics, though, that makes me think bigger than that, because like a guy like Boone Pickens gave an insane amount of money. So it's like, is somebody giving that much money where it's like even above that? I don't know. But it is exciting, and it does make you think, okay, what's going on here? And, get you excited for where it's going to be and what that sort of money is and what KU could possibly do with it. But all right, that'll do it for this episode, a bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Don't forget to check out our normal episode today as well. We'll see you next time for another edition of LOJ right here, anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. See you next time.